Welcome to Scorched Earth and the general reading for the sign of Taurus, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of September. I hope you are well. I'm using the Tarot of the Abyss for you today. So let's get straight in and see what's going on with you. Can I have 3 cards for Taurus, please? Oh, there we are. We have the High Priestess in your recent past. I've got a couple of cards that come out to the right, but I'll come to those in a second. Current energy, please, for Taurus. Ooh, we have the Ten of Swords in reverse. Interesting. And what's coming towards Taurus, please? We have the Ace of Swords for September for you. At the bottom of the deck, we've got the Seven of Wands, and I wonder if this is all tying in with this Ten of Swords and these 2 cards that have come out to the right, which I don't usually take, but I feel like they're relevant here because we've got the Eight of Swords and we've got the Eight of Cups. So here we have this Seven of Wands, which is, you know, a somewhat defensive energy. And we also have these 2 here that speak of a moving away from a very restricted mindset. I can feel how it's all weaving together already. Let me just put those there. Get a clarifying deck out. Kind of like where this is going, Taurus. Let's put some more of that in there too. There. So let's get some clarifiers. What's going on with the High Priestess, please? Why is that here for Taurus? We have the Three of Wands. Oh, whole glut of cards. Let's put those back. High Priestess, please. And the Two of Pentacles. Okay. Tell me about the Ten of Swords in reverse. Why is that card here for Taurus? We have the King of Wands. And we have the Six of Pentacles. There. And what about this Ace of Swords? Oh, look at that. The Strength card's flipped the other way around. I'm going to take that, actually, because I think I kind of slapped it onto the deck. Tell me about the Ace of Swords. We have the Five of Cups. We have the Two of Cups, and we have the King of Swords with the Page of Swords at the bottom of the deck. So, interesting spread of cards that you've got right across all of the elements, and, you know, a couple of major arcana. But most of it is about the activity that you seem to be engaged with at the moment. What do we have under here? We have the Page of Swords and we have the Eight of Wands. Can see things starting to pick up a pace somewhat here. And what's really interesting to me is that there are 2 things going on simultaneously at the same time here. One is there is quite a deep internal shift that seems to be going on, and it's being instigated by you and it's being seen through by you, which I like very much. And that's all of the minor arcana, you know, how you're kind of dealing with things on a day-to-day level. But there is also another kind of subtext thing here, which is that you're breaking out of some sort of mental restriction. And this has been necessary for you to do the things that you're doing, but it's also the things that you're doing that are helping you kind of break out of this. It's kind of, I was going to say it's sort of cyclical, but that's not really what I mean. It's feeding, each one of these things is feeding the other, which is then feeding the thing, then which is feeding the other. Like the Strength card is very well placed here in terms of growth that seems to be occurring for you at the moment, Taurus. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's start at the beginning. So in the recent past, we do have the High Priestess. Now, I like to see this here for you, Taurus, because there was a period a couple of years ago where you and the High Priestess had somewhat of a rocky relationship, in so much as she is indicative of that kind of inner wisdom that we hold within ourselves, and she's a link, right? She demonstrates this link that we have to our higher selves, to the universe, to, you know, the source of all the things, you know, where the knowledge comes from. But most often that is delivered by way of intuition, and that was the thing that you had a kind of rocky relationship with the High Priestess, because the overthinking and the little nagging voice that was telling you that you were doing it wrong was getting in the way of that. So for her to make such a, you know, bold entrance such as this, is a really good indication that not only are you listening to your intuition, but it seems to be in high gear at the moment. It could be that you're sort of doing things without really knowing why you're doing them. Oh, Taurus. Oh, I've just clicked. This is wonderful. We were talking last month, if any of you didn't see it, and a refresher for those who did, have just remembered. We were talking about the notion of where you were going, right? And how, in order for you to feel safe and secure, Tauruses like to have a map. They like to know where they're going, right? So that they can follow it to the letter and be almost assured, guaranteed that they're going to end up where they want to go. But what became very clear over the course of that reading was that where you are going, there can't be a map for it because nobody's ever been there before. The essential Taurus experience that you are living right now in this moment is taking you to places that you have not been before. And you can't use other people's maps because they're not charting the territory that you're going through. So this here becomes that state of doing things but not quite knowing why you're doing them or where you might end up. You're listening to your intuition and it is taking you places. And this is absolutely borne out by what we see here with this Three of Wands and the Two of Pentacles. It's not quite plain sailing, but in some ways it feels like it's no harder than you expected it to be. And that's a huge thing for you, because it's like, okay, well, I can maintain this. This is all right for now. I'm not feeling like I'm wildly out of my depth. I'm not feeling like some big rug has been pulled out from underneath me. I'll just kind of potter along and do what I'm feeling drawn to do when I'm feeling drawn to do it, taking me in a direction that I don't really necessarily know, where I'll end up, but doing it anyway. This Three of Wands is a card of movement. It's also a card for me of a low-level manifestation. It's about actually going after the things that in the Two of Wands you decided you would actually quite like. Okay, so like often with the Two of Wands, what we do is we think about the consequences of taking one route over another, and often within that there's an idea of the destination that we're going to go to, and it's like, well, do I want to go to that one over there, or do I want to go to this one over here? But sometimes you get to a crossroads and there isn't a signpost, and that's where you are. And so it's like, well, I feel like I need to go this way, and it's very strong here, this notion, Taurus, that from this point on, a lot of the movements that you are going to make won't necessarily have some sort of evidential basis for it. Right? Use the map as an example of that, if you will. It's intuitive movements. Because there's a process here of learning to trust yourself and trust your connection, a very, very powerful connection to Source, to the universe, even improving the connection to yourself. I love to see this, because this means to me very strongly that you are going after what it is that you decided that you want. Maybe even you're just living life in the way that you decided you wanted to live it, right? You're completely controlling this ship here, Taurus. We talked about the difference between controlling your environment and controlling yourself. We've talked about it many times on this channel, particularly with you. And that seems to be a lesson that you have deeply internalized now. And it's like, okay, I don't need everything around me to be absolutely nailed to the floor in terms of, fixed energy. Things can move around a little bit. They can be a little bit more flexible. And I too can be a little bit more flexible. I can, bend, not break, and all that kind of sway with the movements. And, this Two of Pentacles is another really validating energy within this, because it's not all plain sailing and you're not there yet, and it's still feeling very much experimental for you. This is not second nature to you, but you're doing it anyway. And there's Two of Pentacles, is that kind of juggling of energy, right? And it's kind of like, well, I'm juggling the things that I need to do, the Pentacles being at this point the things that are valuable to you, so where you are choosing to put your energy. But there's still these ships in the background that are all kind of on the rolling waves. There are emotions associated with this, which are quite strong for you at this point. But there's a level of detachment that you are able to bring to bear on your approach to the situation. So it's like, yeah, okay, in some ways this is actually scaring the shit out of me, but it's not scaring me any more than I thought it would. It's maintaining a level. So I can hold this distance between, what is uncomfortable for me, and just concentrate on the act of doing the thing. And, maybe it might get easier. It's certainly not getting any harder, and that's the important thing. That's the thing that's making you feel like you are not out of your depth. Well, allowing you to know that you are not out of your depth here. Now, when we come into your current energy, we have that Ten of Swords in reverse, which is quite an interesting card. But I feel like I think it's speaking to a failure that you were kind of half expecting but hasn't come. The Ten of Swords is often given to be associated with things like humiliation and betrayal and all this kind of negative and toxic things. But for you here, it seems like because you felt the fear and you did it anyway, right? There was a certain expectation. Maybe it might have been quite loose and it might have been quite vague and it may have only occupied a very, very small amount of your psyche. But there was this nagging kind of expectation, we'll use that word, that this was probably just going to fall over and it was probably just going to fail at the first hurdle, and it is what it is. But you'd committed to this path. You had committed to at least trying it. And what's actually happened is it hasn't failed, Taurus. There might have been little things that came up that were niggling that made you, maybe just briefly second guess yourself. But you shook yourself off, you found your balance straight away, and you got on with the business of sorting that little bit of a challenge out. And you seem to be navigating it with, I don't want to say ease, because I think that undermines what it is that you're doing here. But with a certain amount of grace and dignity, which I approve of very much. I like that very much for you, Taurus. Let me pull out the Celtic Tarot here. So the cards that you've got to clarify it with the King of Wands and the Six of Pentacles there. Now, the King of Wands is not going to brook any lack of action, right? This is continued, sustained motivation to do a thing. So a problem comes up, well, you just fucking deal with it, and then you move on to the next thing, It would be weird if something of the magnitude that you were trying to do, right? And I do feel for a lot of you that this is big life-changing stuff. Some of you might have set up a business. Some of you might be moving, relocating yourself fully. There's a sense that what you are doing is something really quite big. You've got to take it as it resonates to you. But what's sitting behind the King of Wands, every time you come up against one of these niggles, is the Six of Pentacles, is a very deliberate bringing back into balance of your reaction to a certain situation, right? There might have been a number of examples just in the last couple of weeks where a previous version of you might have gone, well, I just don't even know why I was bothering this. It's just the whole idea is fucked anyway. I was just throw in the towel. Which is not to say that Tauruses are quitters. But there might have been things that you would have let die slowly. Just slowly, shifted your attention to other things. And just let it wither on vine. And that's not what's happening here. Because I do feel like quite a bit of this has involved putting yourself out there in a way that you weren't necessarily comfortable. You're still not comfortable with now. But because you've got this level of self-awareness, right, and you know how your mind works now, and you have differentiated between what is your intuition and what is your anxiety speaking, what is your subconscious kind of, muttering in your ear. You can bring that conscious energy to whatever it is that you feel like you're teetering on the edge of freaking out about, and bring some logic and reason to it. Is it reasonable that I am going to freak out about this thing? No. Should I bother wasting the effort in freaking out about it? Probably not. Let's just get on with it. You've built up an incredible resilience, Taurus. What have we got done? Fucking dropped it down there. Is that what I think it is? It fucking is. It's the King of Wands. And he's here with the Queen of Cups. Like, this isn't just some random work project that you're dealing with here. This is something that you believe in quite strongly. You know, it's not just a hobby. There's something really big here for you. And the more time you spend immersing yourself in it, it seems the more you're finding that validation within yourself. That which we talked about for such a long time. It's like, well, I can't do this thing. Oh, let's bring these two cards in here, right? Eight of Swords is very much, oh, I can't do that thing. Eight of Cups is saying, well, I haven't tried yet. It's so funny. I was doing a personal reading with a Taurus today, and that was literally the message that was coming up. It was that, I'm sure she won't mind me sharing, it's completely anonymous after all, but she had realised that I can't do this, I can't do that, was a way of hiding behind it and not even attempting it. Well, you feel to me like you are now, coming to a point where you're realising what the emotional weight of the words "I can't do this," or even the feeling that comes with it, "I can't do this," how it's holding you back, and how you're not prepared to allow that to carry on anymore. This double Leo cards is double King of Wands. It feels very determined to me. More than that, the woman with this bowl in her hand. I really love this Celtic tarot. So if you've been watching the channel for any length of time, you'll know exactly what I think about the Queen and her nasty ass crabby cup, right, that we normally see in the Rider-Waite. This one's really beautiful. She's found something of value and she's really focusing on it. More than that, she's holding it up for everybody else to see. This is something that you believe in and you want to share. The King of Wands is making sure that you don't drop what is important to you. You don't drop what is it you are emotionally invested in, because not only does it contain your own personal growth, here's your development right there, leaning into what is requiring you to exhibit courage. And that's what these three cards are talking about here. Leo is all about courage, Oh, completely forgot what I was saying. Yeah, I've just completely lost my train of thought. But King of Wands isn't going to let it drop. And more than that, I don't think you should even be considering it, because so much of your heart is in this. The Queen of Cups needs to be able to offer that cup out, right? Hold it up so everybody else can see it. So she's kind of a beautiful bowl, actually. But I tell you what I also like about the Queen of Cups. She's actually depicted in the water. And this is not something that you see very often with Queens of Cups, because usually they're on the shoreline for some reason. They might have a toe in the water or something like that, but they're never depicted out at sea, generally speaking, like the King of Cups is. But this one is. She's sat on a beautifully carved rock out in the ocean. Now, look at that. We've got the Seven of Wands at the bottom of the deck here, just like we have the Seven of Wands at the bottom of the Tower of the Abyss. Same card, different deck. And I said right at the beginning there that it was quite a defensive, quite a guarded energy, right? There was an expectation of attack. And it's permeating through the reading, but it's not justified. In so much as there isn't any evidence for you to need to react to that. And the longer that you're spending doing this, whatever it is that you're doing, the more it's becoming apparent that the only person who's ever been really attacking you is you. The only person who's really been holding you back is you. Would you like to know what the card is underneath the Seven of Wands? It's the World card. You know, this kind of energy here, expecting to be attacked, expecting to be judged, you know, expecting some sort of negative energy coming at you from other people. It's coming to an end. Because I feel like you've preempted judgment. You've preempted these negative, you know, assessments of what you've been doing from other people. But sometimes they haven't even been there, you know? You judge yourself much more harshly than anybody else would, Taurus, and, you know, ever was that the case. But you seem to be moving to a point now where you are graduating beyond it. You know, the hold on you that I guess you've had with this Eight of Swords, you know, the way that you've restricted yourself is coming to an end. You are, you know, you're right on the cusp of some sort of big graduation here. And it's like I was saying right at the beginning there, it feels like there is external stuff going on here, but there's a very strong undercurrent of shifts and changes that are going on inside of you too. Now, when we come to September, this is quite interesting because we have the Ace of Swords. As we know, that this is an ace that speaks of not only the truth, if that were not enough, but it also talks about new perspectives, new ways of seeing the world, right? The sword suit is all about the mind and how the mind processes the information that comes through it. And that's not just, you know, the sensory stuff that's coming into your eyeballs right now, but it is also the way that you perceive your past, right? The narrative that you have written about who you have been and how you have got to where you are, and you know, whoever might have been involved in it at that point. It's kind of, it's indicative of great mental creativity, right? There are new ideas coming to the fore here. But if you weave all of that together, and particularly when we're looking at the clarifiers that I've got underneath here, it seems to me that there are a number of epiphanies, not just one, but a number of epiphanies that you are going to be having over September. And most of them revolve around relationships, but not you know, oh, is my ex coming back or anything like that. You know, we have no time really for that sort of thing on this channel, but more so, put it like this, right? Mercury retrograde is on its way in, right? And with the caveat that I am not an astrologer at all, there are certain things that Mercury retrograde seems to tend to do. One of them is to like fuck up your technology and your travel plans. The other thing is it brings things to the surface that we thought possibly were dead and buried or gone, you know, and those can be, well, not dead and buried, right, but old relationships that are done, that we have nothing to do anymore. Sometimes we can see those people pop up, but sometimes it's subtler than that. We just find our mind, you know, wandering to certain things. And I feel like there's going to be something of that here for you this month. There's quite a lot of reflection going on, but there's a lot of joining the dots. And I think that this is really important for you, Taurus, because I think that there are answers here that you hadn't realized were there. In so much as you've been asking questions of yourself for the longest time. And you'll have found some of the answers to the things. But this insight is coming into examining relationships that you have lost. Now, whether they are through, you know, just falling out with each other, or whether they're through bereavement, or whether you just sort of grew apart and then, you know, before you knew it was 2 years and you just hadn't spoken, whatever it is, I think this month you're going to get a really, really clear overview of a lot of things. There are going to be a lot of dots that join together. The important thing is not because we want to go running back to these people and rekindle these relationships. You know, some of them are best left where they are. But to show you how you focused on the wrong things at times, you know, and that would quite likely be, you know, things like your fear of failure and things like that. I mean, I feel like that's what this Ten of Swords is talking about here. You know, it was the fear of failure that has not actually seen any kind of actualization. The Ace of Swords and the King of Swords together, they speak to a great mental clarity. And we would expect that to come when we've had an Eight of Swords that you are now leaving behind. Well, I don't want to get too... Wow! It's the Ten of Swords again, and it's come out in the reverse again. This is really interesting, because this makes this a whole lot deeper than it just was 2 seconds ago. Because just as we're looking at what you are doing now and how you are succeeding in a way that probably is kind of surprising you, because it's no harder than you thought it was going to be, the reflection that is going on for you this month is taking you to relationships and showing you where actually you didn't fuck up quite as much as you thought you did, right? This is failures of the past that you thought were there and actually weren't. This feels quite profound for you, Taurus. You know, it's coming up here with the Five of Cups, which is obviously, you know, we know is a card that speaks of focusing on the wrong thing. It's a card often of loss and grief. And when it speaks to loss and grief and bereavement and those sorts of things, then it's a very understandable, absolute preoccupation with what has gone. You know, this chap here, his cups have fallen over, the water is spilling out onto the bank. Like that water... Doesn't matter if he puts the cups back up again, that water that was in there is gone. And he's just stood there and he's staring at it. What he has not seen is that there are 2 cups behind him. And I think that as a visual representation of grief, I think it does a beautiful job, because there is nothing else when you are in that situation, right? Now, if you have not had a bereavement that you feel kind of coming up to the surface, that is wanting, you know, to be examined again or sat with, you know, certainly looked at, I feel, from a slightly different perspective, and particularly through the lens of where you feel like you have failed them or you or whatever. These themes feel like they're going to be quite important for you this month. Then it's perhaps focusing on the loss. Perhaps you were over-focusing on the loss of a relationship, non-bereavement based. Or maybe while in the relationship, you were entirely focused on the wrong thing. I mean, let's not forget, there are 5 cups. Like I just said, there are 5 cups on that card. Now, the card behind it is the 2 of Cups. As literally in this card, there are 2 cups behind him. You know, could it have been that you were focused on something other than your relationship at some point? Or were you focusing on the wrong things within the relationship? So you lost sight of the bigger picture of this being somebody that you were really connected to. It's going to be different for each of you. And you need to employ some discernment about that. But the fact that the Ten of Swords is here, and the Nine of Wands, interestingly enough, is at the bottom of the deck here, a card that speaks of not only boundaries, and this might be a redrawing of certain boundaries, right, within your own mind, within, you know, within relationships, but with regard to the way that you show up in relationships. And I think for a lot of you that this Seven of Cups is... We've got the Seven of Cups and the Devil sitting underneath there, right? So at times in the past where you were in sort of any kind of relationship, it doesn't have to be a romantic one. It can be a familial one. It can be friends, you know, it can be work colleagues or whatever, where you didn't draw boundaries because you didn't know how to, right? And the confusion that caused to you in just trying to exist, right? Assuming that everybody else had these kind of Taurus frame of minds about stuff, when it turns out that they didn't, you know. So you were having to kind of overwork all the time on what you thought were your really, really good points, and live in terror of the mistakes and the failures that you've made, because everything was just so fucking confusing and people were so fucking confusing. This month is shining a light on that for you, Taurus. Because this Ten of Swords has come up twice. you haven't made nearly as many mistakes as you think you have. You've gained a lot of experience along the way, and some of it was probably really quite uncomfortable. But I love the fact that there's this notion of you putting things together, connecting the dots. Because you're changing. Not only changing your understanding of yourself, but you are changing the framework within which you are operating. Remember, I kind of feel like this entire reading needs to be conducted in light of this strength card here that didn't even jump out of the deck. It just turned over and went, hello, I'm at the top here. Here's growth. Here's personal development. There's so much of that here for you. Courage, right? You're exhibiting courage right now, but you're so much stronger, so much braver than you actually think that you are. And I think over the course of September, you're going to see it more clearly than you ever have before. And do you remember what I was saying about the way that this is feeding, feeding the activities that you're doing day to day, which is in turn feeding your growth and your courage and your bravery and your determination to kind of stick at this, which is then making sure that you can do more in the 3D here. Like, it's beautiful. I love it. I really love it for you. And it might be that you take your foot off the accelerator just a little bit over September while you give yourself some time to contemplate what this Ten of Swords has been for you and how it doesn't really fit into who you want to become. And in doing that, at the same time realizing that you are already who you want to become, you just want to be an even better version of it. Oh, Taurus, this is absolutely extraordinary. Right. If any of this has resonated with you, I'm going over to Vimeo now to do an extended, so you're very welcome to join me over there. We'll dig into September a little bit deeper. I think that this is something that bears digging into. So you can do that if you would like. You could also come and join my Patreon community if you would like. Absolutely sterling group of people over there, a lot of Tauruses over there. And then you'll get access to all of all the other extendeds as well, so you could watch for your rising sign or your moon sign or your Mars or Venus, whatever you like. If neither of those float to your boat, then that is also fine, because free will is everything, right? But know that whatever's happening outside of you, and I do think things will slow down just a little bit over September. It's only slowing down to give you the space to work these things out. It's another one of those situations where you're making so much more progress than you think you do, than you think you are. It's wonderful. I'm here for this all day long, Taurus. Right, I'm going to go. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I will see you soon.